I'll just let them in as the meeting continues.
Sounds good. Can you guys hear me there?
Sure can.
Got it. So I'm Ron with Marigold Home Inspections. We do a number of different things. The topics here today are kind of what you guys should be looking for in inspections and kind of open dialogue. I don't know if you guys want to start with that or kind of start with what we do here first and then get into it. What were you thinking there, Holly?
Why don't we pop into what we should be looking for on an inspections, and maybe that'll trigger some good questions as we go along here.
You got it.
Time, right? And just
Was that a question right away?
Nope, I think someone just didn't mute.
Okay, got it. So some of the things that we see while we're out and about, the first and foremost, walk and talk consultations are a big one. Like one of the key things, I guess, for those are to kind of just say, hey, like when you go into the house the first time, look at some of the spots that you might have issues with right away, because then we can take a closer in-depth look in those, because on those, we only get about an hour most of the time, or even less than that. So make sure you guys know where those problem areas are. So that would be the number one thing for the walk and talk consultations that I would suggest going into them, because sometimes we're kind of looking around at places that don't need us really there, you know, kind of things that you guys know or you can see, if that makes sense. Any questions with walk and talk consultations?
I don't think so right now. So when you're doing those, do you feel like there's like a very common things that you guys are referring to that the agents can keep an eye out for, or?
Yeah, like I've had a lot of calls do with mold, and then also just, you know, moisture in any areas. I would be kind of looking for that, because obviously in Minnesota, we deal with a lot of different things from Mother Nature. So if you want to look up in the ceiling, sometimes those closets, sometimes closer to the attic, and you can find out if you have any installation needs or something like that. That would be the number one thing that I hear about is mold for sure.
Great.
And Curtis will be hopping on here soon. He's on the field, so if he has anything that he thinks that you guys should be looking at, I'll kind of walk him through once he gets on of what we're talking about here too. I think he's hopping on right now.
Perfect. I think I see him here.
Hey guys, this is Sharon Blossom. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, sorry, I'm outside walking, to be honest. So
No worries.
might be some noise distracting. So I think along with what you're saying, for me, I think it's like almost 3 M's: mold. What am I thinking? Mold, mechanicals, and something else that begins with an M, and I can't think of it at the moment. But and also you know, where's the line in terms of me being an agent and your team being inspectors? Like, I'm not qualified to distinguish moisture. That was the third one. I'm not really qualified to distinguish the root cause of any of those things or the age of any of the mechanicals. So help me understand like what you're looking to us to do versus what you guys are doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can answer that. Hi, sorry guys,
Oh, hey.
I'm a little bit late. I'm Curtis with Marigold Home Inspections. I'm the owner, and then Blake is going to be joining us here in a second. He is kind of our senior inspector. So from a agent versus inspector point of view, the big thing that I see is just a general awareness. If agents can be generally aware of potential issues, that really helps us out a lot. So if you guys can say, hey, we saw this while we were touring the house, this is an item of concern, or the disclosure says, I mean, a lot of times we aren't looking at disclosures like you guys are, unless you ask us to. But if you can just say, hey, here's the highlights of the things that we really want you to pay a close attention to, because some of them we might see as nothing, like, hey, that's previous repair, that's nothing. We might talk about it, but if you know your buyer is concerned about something specifically, that just helps us address that with them and make them feel cared for. Does that make sense?
Sorry, I had to unmute again. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, thanks. And I've had only, I think, 2 inspections of recent with you guys, and they both were absolutely fabulous.
Oh,
But in
great.
terms, yeah, they were real, two different gentlemen actually did them. They were absolutely marvelous. Really, really good with the client. The one that we just did on an as-is house, outstanding. And I was a little concerned. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been through these where the inspector has made the buyer so afraid that they back out. And with an as-is house, he was just so realistic and so truthful with them, and they were fine with it. So that's good. But he did ask about disclosures, and I hadn't ever sent disclosures to the inspectors ahead of time. Is that something that you guys normally do or not?
I would rather you just highlight, I mean, personally, from the inspector standpoint, if you can highlight, hey, here's the things that we're concerned about, we'll put it in the inspector notes. And when they open up their app, then they're going to see, hey, these are the concerns of the buyer. That helps us. We don't want to page through a bunch of things that we don't need to if we can avoid it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. And if you want to talk about bad about Blake, he just showed up and it's completely fine. He can take it.
And Blake just bailed me out on the as-is house, actually getting it done as fast as we could. So I have nothing bad to say.
Good. I guess, what other questions you guys got?
What about like, what are the top things you guys are seeing with each inspection? Or like, if you have like the top 10 things that these agents can be looking for in homes that would affect like health, safety, welfare for clients, what are those big things that they should be keeping an eye out for?
Yeah, Blake can speak to this too, but I guess the big things I'd be wondering is like, hey, what kind of financing do we have? I know we're going to start seeing with the interest rates creeping, we're going to start seeing some more FHA, USDA, VA loans. And then they have their own set of health and safety requirements that we need to pay attention to, whether it's chipping paint or it's smoke detector and CO detectors in the right areas. Looking for GFCI outlets where we need them. So a lot of those things I think are some key components that we should be looking for. You can just Google FHA requirements. It's give you a big long list. I think it's good for every agent and to read through those. I actually try to read through them quarterly just because you familiarize yourself with it and you don't get disconnected from the process. And you're like, oh, that is a requirement. Yes, you might not have run across it previously, but after you see another 200 houses, you're like, oh yeah, we ran into that issue. So that helps with that learning process. Blake, do you have some things that you wish?
Yeah, biggest thing too that I see is like repairs done DIY. So something that you can tell if it doesn't look professional is nice to be able to identify, especially underneath sinks. Maybe foundation stuff that just doesn't look to the best ability. Just because there's going to be requirements then that we're going to recommend, maybe doing it by a qualified.
You talk a little louder.
Oh, yeah. So, oh no. Okay. So I would say like work done DIY by the homeowner or homeowner family friend. It's something that we see a lot of, like especially under plumbing, like underneath sinks, and sometimes foundation patching, or even like the homeowner avoiding putting downspouts next to the foundation in the exterior walkways and stuff like that.
Could you hear me? Can you hear me better now?
I can hear you much better now.
Okay.
Yeah.
It must have been
Yeah.
the computer was facing. Our apologies.
Yeah. So I would say like DIY fixes by the homeowner or previous homeowners that haven't been replaced. Bathroom sinks, kitchen sinks, stuff that could be finished by a professional or somebody that is a qualified professional. It's definitely not an inexpensive fix, but something that's good to be aware about just because no one wants to have a slow leak underneath the sink. And then a lot of homeowners, for some reason, especially in like the St. Paul, Minneapolis area, they don't like their downspouts going next to their walkways. So they just remove them and then they end up going next to their foundation. So really paying attention to where those downspouts are going and seeing if that concrete is like deteriorated in any way, steps, walkways, driveways as well.
That's great. So I guess another thing is, I would love to know kind of what sets you guys apart as inspectors versus another company, you know, as agents. It's always scary to have an inspection and have an alarmist inspector come along and scare the client. So what sets you guys apart from other companies?
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so, I mean, I tell all my clients this, but I inspect my client's house as if it was my family's house. So I'm never gonna be one to tell you that your house is unlivable. I'm gonna give you a solution if there's a issue. And I'm always gonna lead them down that right path of giving them options as far as, is it something that a licensed contractor has to do? Is it something that a handyman can do? Because at the end, like, buying a house is not cheap. So being able to take care of some of the repairs that we're recommending, there's definitely more than one option as far as like price wise. And so my goal is when my clients show up with their agent or without, that they're going to be beyond comfortable once they leave that house and day one when they move in, because they're going to know exactly where their shutoffs are, how to maintain their house, and how they can live better where they're not dealing with long-term defects, just about something that they weren't told or informed about during a walkthrough.
I think
I have
something
some-
else that really sets Marigold apart from a lot of the traditional inspectors that you guys see is that we pride ourselves in communication. We're going to put things in layman's terms, so it's going to be easy to understand. We aren't going to, if something's really technical, we're going to try to break it down as simple as possible for your clients. And I think that gives them a comfort level as they walk away. We're also going to take the time to talk through everything. We book an hour for the walkthrough. Generally, it takes 30 to 40 minutes for the walkthrough, which isn't quite, it doesn't take that full hour, but there are those cases that it'll take us an hour and a half and we'll stay there that hour and a half just to make sure you and your clients are comfortable. We also understand, like, sometimes you have those clients that just, they're difficult. Or their family's difficult. And I think we deal with those situations really well. We can communicate with that Uncle Jerry that's coming along because he was a contractor 15 years ago. We can communicate with those people really well. And we can also sometimes massage their ego by letting them be the expert in a certain area of the house. We obviously aren't going to let them steer your clients wrong. But if they're like, hey, I'm an electrician, we'll ask them what they saw, because they want to share that knowledge. That's why they're there. And then a couple other things is we do same day reporting, because we want to give you guys the maximum amount of time to be able to negotiate, especially in this weird market, ever changing market that we're in. And we're more available than other inspection companies. But I'd say on the site, we're going to take the time we inspect beyond the minimum standards of practice that are set by InterNACHI and ASHI. They're the two kind of major players. If you're going to become a home inspector, you got to follow one of their standards of practice. And we go from there's a minimum set and we go above and beyond always. And if there's something else we can add to our repertoire that you're like, hey, it would be really beneficial to your clients, we're also receptive to that information. If we can apply that to multiple inspections and it makes us look better and it makes you look better, we want to do that. Ron, did you have anything you want to add?
I think one key thing is that our age sets us apart, because we're younger than most inspection companies, and I think we can relate more to those first-time home buyers as well, and relate to the older people that are rebuying or buying a cabin or even investing. I think we've been in all of those areas. I'm 33. Curtis is a little older than me. Blake's a little younger than me. So I think we're at the right age in between all those people to relate to everybody. So, and we're more accessible than most people. You have a person that you can call. You have a point of contact. You don't have to call and get through a secretary. You can, if you have a problem with an inspection the same day, you can get a hold of one of our inspectors, me, or anybody in the office right away.
That's
Okay,
awesome. Yep, Sharon, go ahead.
Sorry, Holly. It's Sharon again. See, okay, I got to tell you, I'm out for walks and my mind kind of wanders when I'm like this, and it's going to marketing. So it might be sort of in left field, but here's my thought. the report, the work that you guys do and the walkthrough that you do and the document that you give the buyers, especially I think first time buyers, is absolutely priceless. But here's my thinking. Is there anything that follows up? Because yeah, it's all there, but when it's a first time buyer, they're going through so much and so many levels. And sometimes or often what I'm finding with clients, they're also getting married in between the time they made the offer and the time they're moving in. So there's a lot going on in their lives. My marketing brain is saying like, wouldn't it be cool if we had like a follow-up appointment, like a half an hour, whatever it is, 15 minutes, half an hour, like 30 days after they've moved in? Do you guys have a service like that?
We don't have a service specifically like that, but we make it clear at every inspection that it doesn't matter if they have questions 2 hours from when we did the inspection or 2 years to reach back out to us. I think if it wouldn't be an efficient time block for us because of how busy we are to book that for every person. But if anyone ever wants to have that sit down a month into it, or even 3 months into it, or they're looking at getting a new furnace, they just need to reach out and we'll always block that time for them.
Okay, that's good to know. I think if you guys are okay with that, I think I'll emphasize that, especially with the new buyers. Just remind them like more toward the closing time or after closing that you guys are available for questions. That's fabulous. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I just have a quick question, and I'm sorry if you already covered it, but I've been showing a lot of old homes, like early 1900s, and I don't know what to look for, especially basement. I always get a little nervous that they're like hiding something behind the walls. Is there any way to kind of look at that and see any kind of cues that I could tell, my buyers to look out for?
I mean, so with those older homes, I mean, obviously there's sometimes that they block a lot of the foundation or have patched areas. My best look then is going to that corresponding wall in the exterior and really paying attention to the grading. Looking
Okay.
if we have gutters there. If there's a lack of grass growing, that means that we're getting an over pile of water where nothing's growing there. And that's where we're gonna simply like recommend like the easiest fix for the time being, unless it's a catastrophic foundation issue, is regrading that exterior, which to a homeowner, that's landscaping, which is pretty money. It's not something that is going to cost a lot of money, but it's also going to enhance the look of their exterior house, and it's also going to help that foundation extremely.
Okay, another question then too. How is it bad to see that they have patched a crack in the wall? Because like if
Not
the
at all.
home's from 1900 and you see patches and there's cracks, how serious can that be? Or if you see a black in there, like looks like it's been painted over, maybe, is that mold? Is that crumbling?
Yeah, so a lot of this foundation at some point in time, especially if they have laundry in the basement or if it's like a finished floor, that they'll paint the block with a dry lock, which it kind of helps prevent any absorption of moisture with that block.
Okay.
With cracking, if you see like a stair crack in between the block, which literally looks like a staircase, that's very typical of like settling of a foundation. Vertical cracks again are going to be your like settling cracks. Obviously we don't want to see anything of a larger gap of like the width of a dime or a nickel, where that's where we're going to recommend sealing and monitoring. The bigger cracks that are going horizontal at like a 10 to 20 degree across the wall long spans, that's where we would probably recommend more of a structural engineer, just because we're getting some major shifting in that area. That would just need that professional recommendation or evaluation.
So you said a horizontal crack.
Yeah, and just like
Okay.
yeah, not like in between the mortar, but when you're getting in between the block at a 20 degree angle.
Yeah, with the horizontal, crack, the real flat ones are less concerning. I mean, they can end up being concerning, but we're looking at those ones that are just kind of creeping up or creeping down, depending where it is. If it's going like that, that's when we have more of a concern.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Who else has questions?
I got something for Curtis and Blake, actually. So like with realtors, when they call in and ask about lead-based paint in those older homes, how should they be answering that?
Ron, we could talk about this at another time. No, I'm just kidding. With lead-based paint, I would really encourage you, with your clients, unless they have a major concern with it, to look at the EPA standards before we're testing for it. We can obviously test for lead-based paint. But then we also have to send out a notice to the sellers because we are going to be scuffing up their wall to get that paint. It can take up to a week sometimes to get those results back. And chances are, if the house was built before 1978, we're going to find lead-based paint in it. So we need to see, has it been covered up? Is it chipping? And the other thing we need to know is, are there problem areas you specifically want us to look at? A lot of times, that's not the case. Anything you want to add, Blake, about lead-based paint?
No, and we're really only gonna run into an issue when, depending on those types of loans too, and if it's peeling or scraping off. 9 times out of 10, it's just for peace of mind, and it's all based on the condition of that house, where it creates an issue later on.
Hey, it's Sharon. I've got another one. So we've talked about first-time buyers, which are generally not $1 million homes, and we talked about older homes. What do you guys see in contrast with the luxury homes in terms of inspection? And I guess in today's market, that'd be, I don't know, it used to be $1 million, but maybe 1.5 and over. Is there anything in particular there that we should be watching for?
The biggest issue that I see with large luxury homes is if they're not well maintained. Because sometimes you're buying a house and it had wood windows and you're like, oh, well, the windows need to be replaced. But when you're dealing with something that's 4 times the size of a normal home, that can end up being, it's already a large expense, can be a very large expense. And I know those people are a little more prepared for those situations. They have the financial well-being to make that happen. But the preventive maintenance that you do on your house matters. Because those deferred cost items, if you don't pay attention to them, can really add up, especially if the house is much more valuable. I think the other big thing to be in understanding with is if the house, realistically, are we looking, does it meet our needs? And I know you guys are looking at that with those clients and trying to figure that out, but we want to make sure that with these repairs, is it still going to meet your needs? Because it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes when it's those bigger houses. But I don't think it differs that much. We just see more little issues on these first-time home buyer houses that, and sometimes we don't. Sometimes they're fabulously maintained. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say just being aware of like mechanicals. Obviously, some of these bigger houses that cost a little bit more, sometimes they have 2 water heaters. Sometimes they're just a bigger water heater. Sometimes they have 2 furnaces, where, it's going to be more effective to know ahead of time into buying the house of like the age or the shape of those mechanicals, just because sometimes you're going to be buying 2 water heaters versus just 1, and that's just a double cost at some point in time.
Yeah, good point. Thanks.
Anyone
Another
else?
question about old homes. What about
any
uneven
questions?
floors? Is that a big problem?
What was that?
Uneven floors or like an uneven basement floor, and then also, settling with the upstairs floors.
Yeah, and settling in those basement or the like main level floors and upstairs are just very common. But again, we always go back. We always start at the top of the house and then we're retracting all the way down, following the plumbing, following the structure, and really making sure we're following where the joists downstairs and the support beams, if we're getting any twisting, any cracking in that. Most of the time we're gonna, in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area, you're going to have some uneven floors. Now, if it's drastic where we've seen that it's leading to cracking to the exterior, or a beam is twisted, that's where then we're going to want to recommend a structural engineer. And being able to notice those things, especially on these tight inspection windows that people are offering, it's just nice to be able to like have that as a game plan and trying to get those people out as the time that we're out there as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so speaking of those tight timeframes for inspection, what I'm noticing is that inspections are coming back. You know, for a long time they were waived, or many of them were waived, and now they seem to be coming back. And so far, I'm still doing a pretty short window, like 5 days, 5 days. But I'm thinking as the demand for inspections is going up, how are you guys prepared, and what should we be trying to put in there for timeframes?
Well, we can guarantee availability within 48 hours for those short windows for you. That's kind of our thing. That's what we started with, and then we continue to do that. So if that answers your question.
If you can give us a long window, please do. I will say that. That does help us a lot but we will get you in within 48 hours. And we're also planning to expand our team. We're a growing team just like you guys. So a big focus we have on is bringing on and training new inspectors and making sure that it doesn't matter which inspector you get, you're gonna get the same process.
That's
Awesome.
great. Thank you.
Do you guys, can you just quickly run through like all the inspections that you guys do, and that could be added on to just a general inspection?
Yeah, so obviously you have your base inspection, which just covers all the major mechanicals, plumbing, foundation, electrical, exterior stuff. But we also have the ability to do radon testing, which is a 48-hour test that we drop machines. We also offer sewer scopes. We offer level 2 chimney inspections. We also offer water testing, mold testing, and
We can do light commercial.
light commercial.
And then for your investor clients, we can also do a modified inspection. So a 5-point inspection, which doesn't look at every outlet, every window, but it looks at the core of the house is what I would describe it as. Is another thing that we can do.
That's great. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions?
I think I got another thing that you guys should keep in mind too. We do pre-listing inspections as well. Those are $100 cheaper than a traditional inspection because we're not doing the walkthrough at the end because most of the people know their home. So that's something to keep in mind for you guys as well.
And something just to understand about the pre-listing inspection, I know inspection reports a lot of times get a negative connotation where you're like, oh no, they're just gonna nitpick the crap out of this house and it's gonna be a laundry list then. And something that we can do specifically on pre-listing inspections is we can highlight some of those things that your sellers have done to improve the property. So if they replace their roof in a certain time frame, we can show that it's that the roof is new, or that the windows have been updated, or some of the mechanicals. We can highlight some of those strong that can make your property seem a lot stronger for potential buyers.
That's great. Well, I appreciate your guys' time today. If no one has any other questions, we can wrap up. Going once, going twice.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Holly, for putting it together. That was great.
Yeah, thank you, Holly.
Yes, my pleasure, guys. Well, thanks so much for your time. This is recorded, so we'll definitely send it to you guys as well as put it on our YouTube.
Sweet.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good day.
You too.